Revealed. How a hidden poor girl created chaos and transformed the CEO's life in 30 days. Amelia Johnson's heart felt heavy as she stepped into Maplewood High on the first day of her senior year. She saw them teeth white in their expensive smiles, clothes tailored to perfection, wealth and privilege paraded around her like a shield. She shifted her backpack, the worn fabric a reminder of her mom's endless shifts waiting tables so they could scrape by. The glossy flyer tucked in her agenda tugged at her mind. An internship at TechDynasty. Could this be her chance? Doubt consumed her. What if they rejected her? What if she wasn't enough? A knot tightened in her stomach as students jostled past, laughter ringing like a taunt. But ambivalence was nothing new. She'd learned to mask the weight of her world, hiding behind determined optimism. Yet every dream felt like a distant flicker of light fighting against a suffocating dark. At the end of the day, Amelia found herself alone, gnawing on the flyer's edges, battling her fears. Was ambition a fool's errand for a girl who wore hand-me-downs? Just then, reminders of her life's challenges crashed through: no stable job for her mother, endless bills, and mountains of expectations. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With a surge of adrenaline, Amelia clicked apply on the internship form. The following weeks transformed her life into a new kind of whirlwind at TechDynasty. She was in a labyrinth of sleek desks and polished executives, fighting to stake her claim. Every presentation felt like a tightrope walk, and each critique weighed heavily on her shoulders. Engineered elegance surrounded her. She was a small fish teetering on the brink of a vast ocean. But she couldn't shake off the feeling that even flaws had their beauty, that her raw ideas could disrupt the status quo. Yet the warmth of hope soon turned cold. Murmurs of discontent rippled through the office. Jealous coworkers glared from behind their screens, arms crossed as they undermined her contributions. How dare a high school girl think she belonged here? Amelia's determination surged to counteract doubt, but sweat gathered at her brow at the mere thought of getting it wrong. Amidst this chaos, a phone call from home shattered her focus. Her mom needed a little more help, just another slight dip in their already wavering status. Amelia questioned her own resolve. Was she truly meant to unlock a future, or merely tethered to a past shrouded in silence? Her fingers brushed against the old drawer in the kitchen, where secrets felt buried deep. Awash with stubborn curiosity, she dove into the drawers and unearthed blueprints belonging to a father she never really knew, an inventor for TechDynasty, with a legacy left wrapped in the weight of years gone by. This revelation rocked Amelia to her core. All her doubts surged back with a vengeance, wrapping around her throat like vines, suffocating. She felt the internal dissonance between yearning to forge ahead and the desperation of her family's history pulling her backward. How could she claim a place among these corporate elites, knowing the very genes fighting within her bred defiance yet despair? The air crackled with urgency, pushing her ever closer to a precipice. Would she rise to confront this newfound tracking of who she truly was, or fall victim to a corporate merry-go-round bound by chains of expectation? Before the unfolding storm could resolve itself, Amelia felt the drive of her choices tightening like a noose. There was no turning back. The clock was ticking as she prepared for the confrontation. Would her dreams fuel her determination, or would the shadows pull her down with them? Amelia stood on the precipice of a decision that would define her path forward. The blueprints of her father lay before her, the ink smudged with memories of a potential life that never blossomed. Each line and curve spoke to her like a prophetic voice, daring her to explore not only who he was but who she could become. The fear that clawed at her insides began to morph into a strange resolve. She could either succumb to the nebulous dread of inadequacy or claim the flame of ambition, one that had flickered too long in the dark. Engulfed in her thoughts, she summoned the courage to return to TechDynasty the next day. Striding through the sleek corridors, she felt lighter. The judgmental glares from her co-workers, though still sharp, seemed less immobilizing. This time she would not let whispers of "who does she think she is?" take root in her mind. Determination solidified her stance. She committed herself to each project with renewed fervor. Instead of merely keeping her head down to avoid scrutiny, she began to speak up during meetings, leaning into her fresh perspective. Each idea she articulated brought her closer to a breakthrough. She focused on examining technologies through the lens of accessibility, ignited by her own struggles. Her insights were key elements that others had overlooked. In the weeks that followed, there was an undeniable shift in the atmosphere surrounding her. The contempt had not disappeared, but it had transformed into a begrudging respect from some cornered by their own insecurity. Amelia felt emboldened to push forward, yet there lingered a hidden tension, a volatile backlash waiting beneath the surface. During one particular presentation, she showcased an algorithm designed to increase user engagement for TechDynasty's upcoming app. As she concluded, a wave of applause surged, though only her immediate boss, Ms. Barrett, seemed genuinely enthused. The others offered polite but hollow claps, their eyes glazed with discomfort at the intrusion of a high school intern. "Impressive work, Amelia," Ms. Barrett announced, calling her to the center of attention. "You've tapped into something we all need to be mindful of." The praise felt like a warm hug amidst the frostiness. Yet relief quickly morphed into anxiety, where gratitude for support collided with the fear of losing it. Afterward, Amelia returned to her desk, raw adrenaline coursing through her veins. Alone with her thoughts, she battled a familiar companion self-doubt. What if this was a fluke? What if her moment in the spotlight had just delayed impending rejection? Nestled within those calming walls was a burgeoning storm. In the following days, she noticed murmurs intensifying around her, mixed with subtle stone-cold stares. One afternoon, as she pored over design drafts, her ears pricked up at hushed tones snaking through the office. "I can't believe she thinks she belongs here," one coworker scoffed. "She's just a kid. This internship is a joke," another echoed. With each word, a million possible responses percolated in her mind: anger, defiance, or the urge to withdraw. Yet a voice inside her whispered to push through. Instead, she focused on her work, absorbing each critique to sharpen her skills further. But even as her ambition soared, the looming shadows of her home life and the pressure of her mother's struggles crept closer. She promised to help at home, to bring in more resources to support her family. Yet how was she expected to juggle both worlds? Each responsibility tightened its grip around her, threatening to topple her over. Then, as she sat at her desk that night, the epiphany hit: she needed to weave her worlds together. She could use her role at TechDynasty to create projects that could make a difference for families like hers. Her past was not a weakness. It was her greatest asset. What would she create if her story could reshape the future? She felt a fire igniting within. Perhaps the chaos she was creating was, in fact, a necessary catalyst. Resolved yet cautious, she understood the next steps required more than just raw ambition. They demanded a duality, a fusing of personal struggles and professional duties that needed to come together in harmony. The dawn was breaking within her mind as she prepared to confront not only her co-workers, but the expectations of her life swirling around her. She was ready for a strategic reckoning, one that would demand authenticity and unveil her true potential. As her vision sharpened, she pinned down a bold proposal on her desk: a mentorship program for underprivileged youth, designed to bridge the technology gap. It was time for her story to shift from being a burden to being fuel. But just as she finished, a knock at her door startled her, leaving her unprepared for the confrontation that awaited beyond it. Would she be met with support or resistance when the tides of judgment surged again? The moment of truth approached. The door creaked open, and Amelia instinctively held her breath. It was Ms. Barrett, her presence both a comfort and an additional weight on her shoulders. "Amelia, do you have a moment?" Ms. Barrett's voice was steady, but the aimless flicking of her pen against her notepad betrayed an undercurrent of urgency. "Sure," Amelia replied, forcing a calmness she didn't quite feel. As Ms. Barrett took a seat across from her, Amelia's pulse quickened. Was this an opportunity to discuss her proposal? Or perhaps a reprimand for rocking the boat too much? She steeled herself against a wave of doubt as Ms. Barrett leaned forward, her expression grave. "I wanted to talk about your recent presentation," she began, choosing her words with care. "You've garnered a bit of attention, both good and well, not so good." Amelia's stomach twisted. Attention was a double-edged sword. While Ms. Barrett's enthusiasm had felt like a shield in that moment, doubt now threatened to shatter the fragile armor she'd spent weeks cultivating. I think your algorithm has potential, and I'm encouraged by your approach to accessibility. However, you need to be mindful of the dynamics at play here. Not everyone is ready to embrace your perspective. I understand, Amelia replied, her voice firmer than she felt. But this, she gestured toward her notes, this is essential work. There's a gap that needs bridging and I can help. Ms. Barrett nodded, her brow furrowing deeper. And I want to see that too, Amelia. But we need a strategic rollout, something that can gain traction and convince our more traditional colleagues. The previous week's dread unfurled like a shroud, revealing the crux of her dilemma. Had she pushed too far too fast? The thought felt like ice in her veins. But then a spark of rebellion ignited within her. She couldn't become another cog in the wheel, obscured by the status quo. I've also been thinking I want to propose a mentorship program, she blurted, feeling the fire of conviction reignite. We should invite young people from underprivileged backgrounds to engage with technology firsthand. Expose them to potential careers and skills they didn't know were available. It's time to grow our talent pool, to build future innovators. Ms. Barrett blinked, clearly caught off guard. That's ambitious. Do you really think TechDynasty will fund something like this? If we frame it correctly, Amelia pressed onward, we show how investing in diverse backgrounds benefits the company. The industry needs varied perspectives, and we can lead by example. Contemplation shaded Ms. Barrett's features. You might be onto something, but we need data to back that up. You'll have to put together a solid plan outlining the logistics and costs. Absolutely, Amelia affirmed, her heart pounding with realization this was her moment to turn the chaos around her into structured action. The knots of fear that tightened within her began to loosen, transformed into an urge to plan, execute, and prove herself worthy of the challenges ahead. Just as Ms. Barrett rose to leave, she paused, casting a lingering glance back at Amelia. I'll support you in this, but you must be prepared for resistance. Don't expect everyone to welcome change with open arms. Once Ms. Barrett departed, Amelia sat in a buzzing silence. Excitement thrummed through her veins, clashing with anxiety. Resistance loomed like a storm cloud, but beneath it bubbled a fierce determination to challenge whatever lay ahead. As days turned into nights, Amelia poured herself into her proposal. Statistical analysis, potential partnerships, budget outlines, all her previous doubts faded into fuel for this newfound mission. Yet, she couldn't shake the specter of her coworkers' contempt or the quiet scoffs that danced behind closed doors. Was she ready to face them? To shift their perceptions while juggling home commitments? Each thought became an electric pulse, igniting both strategy and trepidation within her. Then the real confrontation awaited. A crucial meeting with TechDynasty's senior management loomed, where she would present her mentorship initiative against the tide of skepticism she could already envision. Determined, she reminded herself that each step taken was a step toward bridging the gap between her worlds. But as the day of the presentation approached, an unsettling question lingered in her mind. Was she truly prepared for the storm of opposition? And what repercussions would follow her attempts to break the mold? The truth, as she would soon discover, was more than just an unveiling of her plans. It would be a test of her strength and resolve when the tides turned against her. Amelia took a deep breath, ready to confront the storm coming her way. The tide was shifting, and she could either drown in defiance or learn to navigate through it. The clock was ticking, and every tick echoed a challenge. Would she rise or fall in the face of impending battle? Amelia awoke to a pulsating tension in the pit of her stomach. The day had finally arrived. The boardroom awaited her, a stark room lined with glass and practice, where decisions that affected the future were made. At this moment it felt like walking into the lioness den. And she was the intruder. Her presentation materials were meticulously organized, yet self-doubt gnawed at her. What if they laughed? What if they rejected her idea outright? She had spent countless hours preparing, researching data, and dreaming up what could be. Each point she intended to make had the potential to illuminate the pathways she'd mapped for future tech innovators from underrepresented populations. But now, staring into the mirror, she couldn't shake the feeling that she might be setting herself up for failure. She slipped on her blazer, consciously adjusting it to create an image of professional confidence. Drawing on deep breaths, she rehearsed affirmations in her mind, reminding herself that her courage wasn't just about her, it was about countless kids who could benefit if she succeeded. As she walked into the gleaming boardroom, The air felt heavy with anticipation. Ms. Barrett was there, her supportive presence easing the pressure, yet the other senior members regarded Amelia with unmasked skepticism. Their eyes darted to the slides displayed on the screen, scanning as if already judging the merits of the pitch before they had even given it a chance. "Let us begin," the chief operating officer announced, cutting through the silence with formal authority. Amelia cleared her throat, heart racing wildly. The initial minute felt like an eternity, an echo of her private battle seeping into the public arena. Yet she forged ahead. "Thank you all for being here. Today, I present to you an initiative that I believe can redefine how our company approaches growth and responsibility within our community," she said, her voice resonating with a strength that surprised even her. Data points flashed as she transitioned between slides, outlining industry disparities and the clear need for diverse representation in tech. She could sense the initial apathy beginning to shift in the room. Stories emerged of young people overcoming obstacles, and her passion became palpable. Yet, as she reached a particularly impactful statistic about potential mentoring relationships, she spotted a flicker in the COO's eyes, a look of disbelief. It was the kind of judgment that ignited an urge to defend the validity of her project with ferocity. "And what evidence do we have that this is a worthwhile investment for TechDynasty?" he challenged, his brow furrowing as murmurs rippled among the others, questioning the feasibility of her vision. She met the resistance head-on. The IT sector has already shown the benefits of fostering talent through mentorship. Companies that promote inclusivity report higher innovation rates by 20%. Imagine TechDynasty leading the charge for change. The COO scoffed, unwilling to accept the evidence. His dismissive demeanor was an unmistakable hurdle, yet the eyes of her supporters were now on her. Ms. Barrett nodded slightly, urging her on without words. Fueled by that flicker of encouragement, Amelia decided to add a personal touch. She leaned forward, her voice lower yet resolute. "I come from a background where opportunities were scarce. Programs like this could have transformed lives not just for me, but countless others. I'm not just asking for a funding initiative. I'm proposing a moral responsibility." The atmosphere shifted again, this time sparking a contemplative silence. The COO's stance softened slightly, and Amelia could feel the tide changing. As questions emerged, she deftly navigated each with poise, drawing on her research and her truth. Time shifted and minutes felt like seconds as her prepared slides simply became a backdrop to her raw vulnerability. With each response, Amelia felt less like a newcomer attempting to make her case, and more like a voice representing the invisible barriers faced by so many. When the time came for final thoughts, she took a deep breath, summoning her courage. "In taking this step, we can redefine ourselves and impact lives beyond our boardroom. Embracing diversity is not simply a pitch, it's a powerful movement forward." The room erupted into quiet murmurs, and while Amelia's heart raced, she sensed the cracks in the skepticism. But uncertainty still lingered, threaded into the atmosphere just like the unease she had walked in with. Would her heartfelt plea resonate? Or would this be just another presentation doomed to obscurity? As she concluded her pitch, she caught Ms. Barrett's approving nod, but at that moment it occurred to Amelia that judgment came with success. The real confrontation wasn't just about her proposal, it was about her very place within TechDynasty. As the discussions began, she realized the road ahead would be filled with negotiation and compromise. Yet, regardless of immediate outcomes, her mission had only just begun. Now more than ever, she needed to prepare for the next battle. Who would join her in making this vision a reality against the backdrop of doubt? Tomorrow, she would confront those who stood against her revolution, and decide whether her ambition would carve a path forward or result in a bitter defeat. Amelia awoke the next morning with her mind racing. The boardroom discussion from yesterday replayed in a loop, stirring a complex mixture of anxiety and determination. She hadn't just presented an idea, she had staked her identity upon it. As she prepared for the day, a reflection in the mirror revealed not only fatigue but a fierce resolve. What did it mean to step back into that same arena today? Would she simply be defending her case? Or would this moment symbolize the emergence of a leader eager to dismantle steely conventions? Amelia brushed her hair back and tightened her expression. This was her fight. Arriving at the office, she felt the familiar hum of the environment, yet it was charged with an air thicker than before. Whispers lingered among colleagues, and Amelia could feel the weight of unspoken opinions pressing down on her. Faces turned away as though her ambition threatened their comfort. Yet underneath the uncertainty, it was her sense of purpose that anchored her. She decided to seek out Ms. Barrett for guidance, drawing strength from her mentor's experience. They met in a small conference room away from prying eyes. Ms. Barrett's presence radiated reassurance, and Amelia poured out her thoughts. "I'm not sure if I can convince them again today. Doubt is hanging over me." Ms. Barrett leaned forward, her gaze firm. "Doubt is a part of this journey, Amelia. You need to confront it, replace the fear with strategy. Wouldn't you rather engage them in a dialogue than retreat into silence?" Amelia nodded, understanding. Each challenge presented an opportunity for growth. Together, they mapped out a plan to address the board's skepticism head-on. The data was compelling, but it was her story, her background that could ignite empathy. Amelia could no longer rely solely on logical arguments. She had to draw out emotional engagement. After their meeting, she absently wandered the halls, lost in thought. Her heart raced at the prospect of the formal meeting later that afternoon. How could she convert her nerves into powerful energy? She had learned from yesterday's experience that authenticity was her greatest weapon. Throughout the day, she refined her approach, rehearsing in her mind how she could deeply connect with the board members. She pictured their faces as she explained the direct impact her initiative could have on individuals like herself, people ignored by a system that favored privilege over perseverance. As the hour approached, Amelia stood before the mirror once more. But this time it was not just a reflection of doubt. It was one of a woman ready to challenge norms. She envisioned each board member as a gatekeeper to possibilities, not as adversaries. The boardroom door swung open, and the atmosphere buzzed with cautious curiosity. Amelia sensed their uncertainty. She needed to exploit it, to turn it into a shared understanding. Standing once more before them, she felt that her spirit was broader than her self-doubt. "Yesterday I shared a vision," she began, determination fortifying her voice. "But today I want to share what that vision means to me personally." As she spoke her truth, she navigated through statistics but anchored herself with visceral storytelling. A boy from her background had often felt voiceless in the tech landscape. By the end of her pitch, she lingered on a personal connection, inviting board members to view her quest as a collective moral obligation, rather than a bottom-line issue. The CEO's brow furrowed again, but this time something had shifted. "Are you saying we have an ethical responsibility here?" he asked, his voice cutting through the tension. "Yes," Amelia replied, direct yet vulnerable. "This isn't just about market share. This is about changing lives. If TechDynasty wishes to be an industry leader, we must turn our attention to those who have been overlooked. Wouldn't you rather lead a company that creates impact, rather than one that simply competes?" As the dialogue unfolded, Amelia felt tugged in various directions, applause from the supporters and further skepticism from the resistant. Yet she navigated each query with poise, revealing a deeper level of understanding about strategic compromises. But as the discussion crescendoed, a chilling realization dawned on her: she still had adversaries, and the same skepticism hung palpably in the air. Achieving consensus or even modest support was a mountain yet to climb. By the meeting's end, the CEO seemed to relent, but resistance was there, scrawled in the faint shake of his head. "We'll need more compelling evidence, Amelia." That comment paralyzed her momentarily, a cruel reminder of her vulnerability in this high-stakes game. But now it was different. She could feel her resolve solidify, not merely as a response to rejection, but as a catalyst for future discussion. The door clicked shut behind her, leaving Amelia to ponder the battles that lay ahead. She knew she had to prepare for a new wave of opposition. And perhaps, just perhaps, her ambitions were forcing her to reinvent not just her career but her own understanding of success. Could she rally allies in this fight for acknowledgement? Would her next steps carve the path that would truly ignite change? Or would they only reinforce the barriers around her? With a newfound determination, Amelia felt prepared to rise up to those challenges. Yet one question remained. What price would she have to pay to turn her vision into reality? The following day arrived with the weight of a challenge still heavy on Amelia's shoulders. She sat at her desk, a kaleidoscope of strategies swirling in her mind. Yesterday had been a pivotal moment, yet the glimmer of hope was dimmed by skepticism, and a lingering need for further validation from the board. The COS words echoed in her thoughts evidence. They had said, more proof required. In the pit of her stomach, doubt began its insidious creep, urging her to retreat into the shadows where the stakes felt lower. Yet Amelia felt a flicker of anger flare within her. Why should she shrink away from the value she believed her initiative could unleash? Each moment spent mulling over her past failures was pressing upon her, molding the contours of character that would define her future. Fueled by this simmering resolve, she returned to her computer, poring over market research and data analytics to fortify her next pitch. She noticed a pattern emerging, one that mirrored her own struggles. The tech industry was rife with neglected potential, and many others shared experiences akin to hers, voices muted by systemic barriers. This was a narrative, rich and thick with humanity, and she sought to hone it into an authentic presentation that would resonate with the board. With a clearer objective emerging, she reached out to former colleagues and industry contacts, gathering anecdotes, success stories, and powerful statistics. She transformed her desk into a nexus of inspiration, cluttered with documents, images, and personal testimonies that anchored her vision to real-world human experiences. Each interaction revitalized her motivation, exposing a tapestry of challenges that her initiative could address. As she connected these dots, Amelia felt her own confidence swell. She was no longer just spouting charts and graphs. She was telling a story that mattered. It tied piecemeal data back to the people whose narratives were often overlooked. But the deeper she delved into her preparation, the more she recognized the shadows that loomed on the professional horizon, namely, those unyielding board members who had mistrusted her ambitions the day before. The prospect of facing their skepticism again filled her with an unsettling mix of anticipation and anxiety. Would they see the woman behind the pitch, or would they merely view her as another cog in a machine they had little interest in disrupting? That unease orbited her, and Amelia took a moment to quiet her thoughts with a determined breath. She recalled Ms. Barrett's earlier guidance. Engage them in a dialogue. The idea of entering the next meeting equipped with empathy, not just facts, seemed essential. She needed to appeal to the ethos of the company's leadership, igniting feelings rather than merely wrestling for rational agreement. As the afternoon approached, she felt a surge of energy. Armed with handmade visuals and a solid narrative thread, Amelia set forth to re-enter the boardroom, ready not just to present, but to provoke a meaningful conversation. She visualized it vividly, the board members actively listening, nodding in understanding as she articulated a vision that combined ethical responsibility with business acumen. Just as she reached the boardroom door, a nervous flutter twisted in her stomach, but she swallowed back the fear. This wasn't just her fight. It was an indictment of the systemic inequities she had faced all her life. She pushed through the door, ready to challenge the conventional wisdom with her growing mastery. The meeting commenced, tension palpable. But one by one, she engaged her opponents, focusing on weaving her narrative through quantifiable metrics and powerfully evocative anecdotes. Observing their responses became her new emphasis. She was not merely a speaker now but a catalyst for dialogue. Yet, as discussions unraveled and the energy shifted, a chilling voice cut through her rising optimism. A skeptical board member challenged her approach, his tone dripping with condescension. You may feel emotionally connected, but we need to anchor our decisions in facts that justify change. What will it cost us? What is the ROI? A rush of anger surged through her, battling against her carefully constructed composure. Was this man implying that human dignity could be debated in terms of profit margins? Amelia took a deep breath, her emotions intertwined with strategy. She was on the brink of either fortifying her own resolve or unraveling under pressure. Her heart raced and ideas raced through her mind. Skilled retorts, potential counterarguments. But no, this was an opportunity. Let me clarify, Amelia began, her voice steady. In investing in people, we don't just secure returns. We create legacy. Our values and vision can align to stand out as a market leader. The room fell silent, the weight of her statement hanging in the air. Heavy brows creased, whispers ignited. Had she crossed a threshold, or merely walked into another great wall of skepticism? Her determination surged with clarity. As she summarized her thoughts, a sudden realization hit her. This was not just about proving herself. It was about the transformation, a transformation that risked everything. and accepted the consequences of standing tall amidst the rubble of doubt. As she finished her statement, she felt a vigor coursing through her veins. But what awaited her at the end of this confrontation? Could she solidify her foothold in the boardroom, or would she falter under the weight of systemic refusal? Each question lingered, merging into an unsettling sense of anticipation. Her battle was far from over. The outcome would determine not just her professional journey, but the vision she would rally behind. In this game of strength, both personal and corporate, could Amelia find the footing to unleash the change she so fervently believed in? Tomorrow would reveal the next phase, either a step closer to her visions manifesting, or the reality of yet another evaluation of her worth. Amelia stood before the board, her heart pounding as she weighed the moment's gravity against her desire to forge a path through the uncertainty. The room was still charged with her last declaration, and she could sense the skepticism cloaked beneath their expressions. Yet, a flicker of hope ignited inside her. Perhaps this was the breakthrough she had been yearning for. A shift in their thinking. She prepared herself mentally, fingers rehearsing gestures that would accentuate her points without distraction. Yes, they needed facts, but perhaps what they also needed was to see the human side of this initiative. Her motivation was personal. Changing the narrative isn't merely about profit, she continued, leaning into her words. It's about empowering individuals who have historically been sidelines, overlooked. It's about the untapped innovation from diverse minds. Don't you want to lead this company towards a future that not only profits but also resonates with integrity? A murmur of surprise flickered across the boardroom, and she could see the unexpected impact of her phrasing. Doubt replaced by curiosity, she pressed on, drawing on the experiences she had gathered. She recounted the story of an employee who had previously been marginalized within the company, a young engineer whose ideas were routinely dismissed. When finally given the opportunity to share her insights, she led a project that not only optimized productivity, but also infused a spark within her team. Amelia noted how the board shifted slightly in their seats, some drawing closer, as she structured the narrative. Yet Amelia was acutely aware that their newfound interest could vaporize as quickly as it had arisen. She needed to keep the momentum, to keep injecting urgency. Imagine if every employee's full potential was realized. Think of the breakthroughs, the market leadership we could achieve. Let us not just focus on spreadsheets. Let us tap into stories that drive our mission. As the meeting unfolded, tension visibly ebbed. Board members began to engage, turning to one another, weighing her words, hearts and minds slowly unshackling. But she knew that this was only a reprieve, a moment bought with her vulnerability, and she felt the weight of every implication. Look, I understand the hesitation, Amelia said, summoning all the sincerity she could muster. I've faced moments of hesitation and self-doubt. I've been at a table where I felt my voice was background noise. But this isn't about me. It's about the lives we can improve, the ideas we can cultivate. Something clicked in the air, and though she had passionately advocated without restraint, an internal tussle simmered on the horizon. What if this wasn't enough? What if she left the room without sealing the deal? Every ounce of her experience came surging back. The times she'd been too timid, too uncertain, too cautious. She had grown solitary in her journey, vaulting from one setback to another alone. Now, however, she recognized that her transformation was not isolated. It tethered her to the broader experience. A voice interrupted her thoughts. One of the board members leaned forward, a hint of challenge in his demeanor. You speak of empowerment, but how do you intend to measure this success? What specific metrics can we look at? She took a breath, welcoming this challenge as an essential stepping stone. Let us devise KPIs that reflect both community engagement and customer feedback. Beyond profit margins, let us grade our initiatives on the diversity of input, the innovation brought forth by all voices. This was uncharted territory, but Amelia felt an instinct within to embrace the discomfort and push further. Let's create a feedback loop, communicating not just through financial statements but through narratives of growth and progress, much like the stories I've shared today. As she spoke, the realization dawned on her she was no longer just a candidate for a project. She had slid into the role of an advocate, a leader. Her passion could no longer be contained under layers of self-doubt or fear of rejection. The surging energy of the room felt palpable as her words sparked interest. She was gaining ground, but would it be sustainable? Could she keep the conversation flowing? Strip bare the layers holding them back from embracing a vision that extended beyond the corporate bottom line? But just as Amelia sensed a breakthrough, the COO raised an eyebrow, his voice steady yet uncompromising. Interesting points, but what if the resistance to change is stronger than the benefits you propose? Her stomach twisted. She had anticipated this. There was no grand illusion about instantly breaking through skepticism. It was a battlefield of progress marred by the realities of entrenched practices. She forged ahead. Every significant change meets resistance. The real test lies in our willingness to confront this, to engage in courageous conversations, and to challenge the status quo. As silence fell once again, the stakes rose once more. Amelia braced herself. This wasn't just a question of acceptance, it was a challenge to her core. Could she inspire a true transformation, facing the upcoming resistance with tenacity? A deep breath filled her lungs. Tomorrow would bear witness to the outcome of this pivotal moment, where footsteps would either echo in the corridors of progressive change or retreat back into cycles of doubt. Was she ready to risk everything for a chance at that greater purpose? The following day, Amelia rose with the sun. A fresh resolve cloaked over her shoulders like a protective mantle. She looked out of her apartment window at the bustling streets below, where a city that never truly slept continued its daily grind. Today wasn't about mere survival in the corporate sphere. It was about sparking a revolution from within. She had stepped into her own leadership narrative, and the stakes had never been higher. During her commute, she replayed the dialogue from the board meeting in her mind. Each syllable felt sharper than the last, like the lingering echo of an alluring melody that had faded too soon. She mused over the COO's challenge, knowing it represented more than just a pushback. It was an invitation to refine her approach. What if the resistance is stronger? She had to address that fear directly and transform it into actionable insights, a rallying cry for change. By the time she stepped into the office, the raw edges of former hesitations had smoothed, replaced by a vision of clarity. Colleagues greeted her with a mix of awe and skepticism, whispers about her proposal threading through the air. Their curious expressions both motivated and unsettled her. How could she ensure that this was the beginning of a collaborative journey, rather than a convoluted battle? In her first meeting of the day, Amelia pulled together a small, diverse group of trusted colleagues. It was a calculated risk. She was aware that this circle of advisors, though influential, could also amplify doubts. But if she truly championed the cause of inclusion, she'd have to start it within her inner sanctum. She welcomed their insights with authenticity and reveled in the dynamics shifting with every shared story, each word dissolving the residual hesitancies of the prior day. We need to quantify our impact. Yes, Amelia began, setting her intention. But let us not lose sight of the heart behind it all. Our collective experiences and the cultural shift we're asking for. We can create metrics that signify growth not only in numbers but in empowerment. We're not just selling a product, we're revitalizing lives. Discussions flowed around the room, building momentum. Ideas about training sessions emerged, fostering openness, encouraging dialogue, all aimed at dismantling barriers that had stifled creative potential. They brainstormed ways to track engagement beyond the spreadsheets that had so dominated their lives. As the meeting concluded, Amelia felt a flood of camaraderie. Something had shifted. The group was ready to face the skepticism together. However, as she stepped back into the maze of corporate life, the COO's words loomed ominously in the background. What if resistance was indeed stronger? What if the once supportive dynamic began to unravel under external pressures? That evening, as she sifted through a mountain of emails, an unexpected message caught her eye. It was from a senior executive who had previously been indifferent to her project. They expressed a desire to discuss her initiative further, highlighting concerns but also curiosity. Intrigued, Amelia accepted the meeting. Knowing every interaction could sway her cause, this was a critical opportunity to peel back another layer. Hours later, seated across from the executive in a conference room framed by glass walls, Amelia felt the room thrum like an electrified wire. They began with apprehension, their skepticism palpable. Yet each response honed Amelia's articulate arguments further, drawing her deeper into the intricacies of their viewpoints. With every challenge they presented, her resolve solidified. She drew from her early feelings of isolation and self-doubt, unearthing vulnerabilities she had thought were consigned to her past. She spoke not as a candidate speaking to an executive, but as a champion of a greater cause. This was her moment to influence not just perceptions, but actual change. Midway through the conversation, the executive's demeanor shifted. A curious glimmer sparked in their eyes, as if they too were weighing the gravity of the narrative. Amelia's heart raced. Could she be reaching them? As the meeting drew to a close, Amelia realized she hadn't simply sought approval, she had ignited the flames of hope within someone else. With this realization came renewed determination. She was charting a terrain riddled with pitfalls, but her compass was set on transformation. However, the lingering thread of uncertainty twined around her thoughts. Could she cement the tides of momentum before another wave of resistance crashed ashore? The executive leaned in, their voice steady but slightly apprehensive. But as we delve deeper, how do we ensure that the changes you propose can actually withstand the established norms of our corporate culture? The moment of truth was upon her. Would this small win unravel before she could truly challenge the status quo? Amelia felt her heartbeat quicken, a silent drumroll echoing the stakes laid bare before her. The executive's words hung in the air like a loaded question, and for a moment doubt nudged its way into her mind. How could she ensure that the changes she envisioned wouldn't be smothered by the very culture they sought to evolve? I believe, she replied, her voice steadying, that sustainable change begins with honest conversations. It's not just about new policies or metrics. It's about embedding a sense of ownership within every level of our organization. We need everyone to feel accountable for this transformation. Her assertion sparked an unexpected shift in the air. The executive leaned back, taking a moment to absorb her words. Amelia could see skepticism in their eyes transform into contemplation. Yet she knew she had only scratched the surface of a deeper question: how to progress past established norms that had thrived for years. I suggest we start small, Amelia continued, her mind racing ahead. Pilot programs that allow employees to experience firsthand the benefits of our proposed changes. We can create small task forces focused on specific challenges. Rather than just stating what needs to change, let us demonstrate it through real action and foster environments where staff can lead from within. The executive nodded, a hint of approval sneaking into their expression. Pilot programs could work, but will that suffice in overcoming the entrenched attitudes that have caused this company to stagnate? The challenge ignited something within Amelia. We break down silos, she responded, her intensity rising. We engage employees across departments and levels, capture their insights, and bring them into the conversation. Every voice matters. Every experience shapes the outcome. If we can display visible early wins, that will ripple through the organization, shaping a culture of collaboration and trust. In that conference room, each encounter with challenge sharpened her focus and determination like a blade. She thought of her own struggles and the isolation of being unheard. If she could validate those feelings for her colleagues, harness their collective stories, then they would march forward united. Yet the shadow of doubt crept closer. She knew the whims of corporate politics could upend even the best-laid plans. A single misstep could mean pushback from those still clinging to autonomy and familiarity. The invisible leash of conventional thinking had its grip firmly locked, and Amelia could only guess how tightly it would pull. Can you provide me with a timeline on how quickly these changes can be executed? I need to manage expectations from the executive team, the executive said, their gaze suddenly scrutinizing. Amelia paused, mulling over her response. Flexibility was key, but false promises could breed further resistance. I can work on drafting a timeline with milestones, but I'll need your support in communicating our objectives to ensure alignment across all divisions. Real change takes time and patience. The executive's expression softened. Let us set a follow-up meeting to discuss the details further. I'm interested to see how this could unfold. As she left the glass-walled room, a mixture of exhilaration and trepidation coursed through her veins. She had momentarily swayed one skeptic, but what lay in wait among her peers? Could she replicate this victory across the organization and gain allies in the most unexpected places? Amelia found her mind flitting to tomorrow's meetings. She needed to tap into the nascent energy she'd built. It was imperative to keep the lines of communication open and make everyone feel they had a stake in this evolving narrative. But could she extend that reach to the very core of the corporate culture that sought to stifle innovation? Just as she settled into her office chair, A notification pinged on her device, a follow-up from the COO. The subject line sent chills down her spine. Next steps. All her progress could be unraveling before her. What awaited in that message could very well shift the tide. Amelia stared at her screen, heart racing as uncertainty gripped her. The COO's email was both a lifeline and a looming storm cloud. A reminder that the delicate balance she'd been trying to strike in TechDynasty was far from secure. Next steps? She whispered to herself, awareness dawning that this could be a pivotal moment in her journey. As she opened the message, she steeled her resolve, bracing for the worst but hoping for the best. With every word she read, her pulse quickened. The COO was indeed interested in her mentorship initiative and wanted to discuss potential logistics. But there was a catch. He requested detailed metrics to evaluate its feasibility before any commitment was made. It was a confirmation that her earlier struggles had opened a door, but now that door was narrowing, and she needed the right plan to get through. Rising from her desk, Amelia paced, thoughts racing as the reality of the situation settled in. This was not merely a bureaucratic hurdle. It was a reflection of every concern she'd faced since her first day at TechDynasty. Self-doubt threatened to re-emerge. The whispers of just a high school intern haunted her again. But deep down, she recognized that her growth was not only rooted in the skills she had developed. It was tightly bound to her lived experiences and the courage to articulate them in the workplace. Determination surged within her. If she was to champion this vision, she had to craft a plan that not only satisfied the COO's requirements, but also exemplified the very values she wanted to embed in TechDynasty's culture. With each keystroke, Amelia meticulously outlined data collection methods to track engagement, success stories, and tangible impacts. She drew from the earlier conversations with her colleagues, incorporating their insights to ensure that her proposal resonated with varied perspectives. She described metrics such as increased participation rates among interns from underrepresented backgrounds, enhancements in employee satisfaction scores, and feedback loops that would measure ongoing impact. As the hours trickled away, her plan transformed from a collection of ideas into a cohesive document, one that bridged her intimate understanding of the challenges faced by aspiring tech innovators and the logical framework needed to navigate corporate scrutiny. Empowered by her newfound sense of purpose, she hit send with a surge of energy. The next day she sought out Ms. Barrett, eager to share her progress. Her mentor welcomed her with an encouraging smile, validating Amelia's efforts. "This is exactly what we need, a comprehensive roadmap," Ms. Barrett affirmed as she skimmed through the document. "You've demonstrated growth, Amelia. You understand not just the data required but the people behind it." But with encouragement came the reminder of the uphill battles. "Prepare yourself, Amelia. The COO's approval will require seeing not only potential, but also tangible proof backed by company resources. Expect resistance." Amelia nodded, feeling buoyed but anxious. "I'm ready for it," she responded, internalizing the urgency she had cultivated. This wasn't about gaining acceptance. It was about reshaping the corporate fabric into one that recognized human stories as crucial data points. Their discussion shaped a clearer vision. The path ahead wasn't solely one of logistics, but was also about storytelling and creating advocates across departments. Days turned into a flurry of preparations, meetings, and refining her approach. As Amelia delivered her proposal to the COO, she recognized a tension wafting through the room. He challenged her repeatedly, questioning the viability of her initiative as she stood undeterred. The discussions exchanged not merely numbers but personal insights. She recounted interviews conducted with potential participants who had expressed their excitement at the prospect of mentorship opportunities, their stories echoing the dreams of youth overshadowed by circumstances. Despite the skepticism she faced, Amelia's heart surged with the conviction that powerful change could only happen when voices like hers became integral to the conversation. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of back and forth, the COO's expression softened. "You've built a compelling case, Amelia. While I have reservations about our capacity to sponsor such an initiative fully, I see merit in a pilot program. If we can structure this to prove it yields real outcomes, I'd be willing to move forward cautiously." Triumph surged through her. Detours were now viable paths, and each obstacle was an opportunity that she had transformed into leverage. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady. I truly believe this can reflect our core values and drive innovation. As she left the COO's office, Amelia's sense of fulfillment was enveloped by the thrill of achievement. She hadn't merely proved herself, she had shifted perceptions. Her proposal, now rooted in strategic insights, opened a pathway to dialogue that would enmesh her identity within TechDynasty, a place that once seemed daunting but now felt empowering. Weeks later, as she witnessed the first cohort of participants engaging in the mentorship she had envisioned, pride flooded through her. They were filled with hope and ambition, a reflection of what she had once fought against. Each interaction she facilitated reminded her that this space belonged to those who dared to challenge narratives, including her own. Looking back at her journey, Amelia realized her transformation was a journey punctuated by courage, questioning norms, and redefining space. She had conquered not just professional fears, but had embraced the intricate tapestry of personal resilience that characterized her story. As the sun dipped below the horizon, a feeling of deep satisfaction wrapped around her completed projects, committed mentors, and a growing network of resilient young innovators now became part of her legacy at TechDynasty. With that, Amelia Johnson proved to herself that success wasn't just about existing in the boardroom. It was about becoming a voice that harnessed potential, catalyzed change, and forged community through the power of individual stories. To all the viewers who resonated with Amelia's journey, you need to subscribe now and be part of our next exclusive emotional stories. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and ensure more inspiring tales reach those who can benefit. And comment your reactions and theories about this transformative journey. Join the conversation. Your voice matters.